Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome again, everybody. And of course, I will introduce our team. In her absence, Mia Harnos, who is the Director of Energy Partnerships. She is attending the NASCAS conference, so she will not be able to be here today. And then you have myself. I'm Keisha Johnson, Project Director, Weatherization Workforce Development. John O'Donnell, who is the COO and our fabulous presenter today of Optimum Performance Solutions. And then we have our newest NCAP member, Miss Aderica McLean, who is our Senior Associate for Weatherization Workforce Development. I'm going to give her a few moments to introduce herself, and then she is going to do the role.
Thank you, Keisha. Hello, everyone. Like Keisha said, my name is Aderica McLean. I reside in the state of Michigan, and I've been with Community Action for a little over 15 years. I'm the newest member of the NCAP Energy team, and I'm happy to be here. I'll be working really hand in hand with Keisha on weatherization workforce development. So excited to go through this session with you all and be of support. So nice to meet everyone. And then I will go ahead and get started with roll call today. And I apologize in advance if I misspell or mispronounce anyone's name. But first person on the list is, in my list, let me see. I have, and so let me let you guys know too, in order to get through roll call today, kind of really quickly, we've decided that I'll call your name and then you can say in the chat if you're present or not, because we want to leave some time for Keisha to review the homework. So, Lauren, if you are here, could you please in the chat type present? Next would be Barb and Briella. I really like that name as well. We know that Armando is not here today. That's okay. Devin, present in the chat. Peter, if you are with us. Annabelle, Jordan, Cheryl. Next would be Jamie. And we also know that Tanja may be a little late, but she'll be joining us as well as Jeanette. But if you all are here, go ahead and type present in the chat. Monica. Then we have Crystal, Logan, and Tara. So if any of you are present, please type it in the chat and we'll capture attendance that way. And before I turn it over to Keisha to get started with our homework, we have a poll question for you all. Since this is fall is near and approaching, what is your choice? This is our poll question today. This or that, would you choose pumpkin spice latte or apple cider? Oh, I'm with the apple cider people. So, to all of you, please
Yes,
type
yeah,
here.
that is right.
Your pumpkin spice?
Yes, this would be a something. Sorry. I 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much for participating. And we have, did it pop up the percentages? It did. There, as you see, apple cider was the drink of choice. Boo. Thank you so much. Okay. Alrighty. So, as you know, we had some homework and it was for you to complete the Litmos module that focused on program management and reflect on it and be prepared to discuss. So I'm just going to say, just for time purposes, if you would drop in the chat maybe one word or two that can describe your thoughts on that module for program management, and we may pick a person to share. Now y'all know I'm just gonna call on you. Okay. Oh, okay, Crystal, I just saw in the chat your message. Okay, that's fine. Oh, stress relief. Briella, please do share.
The one
Interesting.
thing that targeted me is I saw one portion that was about stress, which is pretty relevant at the moment for a lot of different reasons for the entire team. So I took a
Mhm.
lot of those kind of pointers and just to kind of do even like touch bases and see how people are and how to make sure it's not affecting, work and bringing it to other people's homes. So that actually really took a lot of notes on that. But I felt like that was relevant, how to like steer it away so the personal is not going into professional because they're also stressing. So how can we make a
Mhm.
relaxing environment for everyone?
Good. That's right. That's right. Okay, Annabelle, retaining good people. True. That's always a good thing. Monica, you want to elaborate on your thoughts?
I felt that it was really helpful to list some training opportunities, as she already mentioned about the stress relief and even burnout with certain staff. It's helpful to let staff know that you don't have to feel overwhelmed. Just communicate. And maybe the reason you're feeling that way is maybe time management skills, or maybe you're misunderstanding something. That's why it's taking longer than usual for you to process a task. So I did like how that the training opportunities could um, run and kind of mesh together with helping people function with their job duties.
Mhm. And guys, as you were looking at the Litmos platform, the module, I'm sure you noticed there were other courses in there. So hopefully you were able to create a profile because those resources and courses are very, very helpful. And when you are a person that's new in weatherization or even trying to enhance your career path in weatherization. So please make sure you bookmark that Litmos platform. We may go back and touch base on it. Okay.
Could you
Um,
drop the link to that in the chat really quick?
Absolutely. I sure will if you give me a few minutes. How are you, Mr.
Absolutely.
Joseph? Good to
Doing
see
well. How
you.
about
Good to
yourself?
see you. I am wonderful. If I may just ask for those that maybe came in a little bit after we called roll, if you could just drop in the chat that you are present so our staff member, Aderica, can mark you present. That would be helpful. Okay, so now with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our fabulous, fabulous presenter from Optimum Performance Solution, Mr. John O'Donnell.
Good afternoon, everyone. I trust this is a productive day for you so far, and in the moments we have together in the next couple hours, that it'll also be a productive time as we share together, and then as we go into breakout sessions, are able to collaborate and share our personal experiences around these topics, so we can also enhance the impacts that we're having in our communities through a collected effort. And so we'll dive right in today. As you can see that we're looking at a client. First, there are two sections of this. It's going to be a client focused community service and then evaluating organizational performance. I am John O'Donnell. That's we can move to the next slide and get away from that picture. But I'm with Optimum Performance Solutions, and I'm glad to be a partner and consultant with NCAP in these presentations and other opportunities we have to work together. And so our first section today is going to be on client-focused community service. What you'll find is this section is not directly designed to assess really your current client services techniques, or even to directly provide tools for more effective or efficient client intake, case management, or client advocacy. It's really more intended kind of as a space for us to reflect more on the why that's residing in a client-focused community service. And so that as we do that, we can avoid succumbing to the subtle influences that want to leave us with instead of having a client-focused community service, we wind up with a services-focused community program. And those are very different from one another. And so that's where, as we're looking here at this first portion of it, is making sure that we're prioritizing clients. We're all committed to helping people and changing lives. That's why we show up and do what we do. That's why we're here. That's why we are employed where we're at. We have a heart that wants to see our work have a positive impact in the lives that are around us, our coworkers, but also the clients that we serve and the community that they reside in, that we're a part of. And however, it's easy in a grant-based community action world to have a subtle focus shift into the quotas, into the households, into the numbers, into the quotients, the average cost per unit and spend rates and these other things. And it winds up blurring our perspective, and there's a danger of losing sight of what the real priority is, and that is helping people and helping to change their lives, and not just seeing it as a quota or a number. We've all encountered, and you may have some right now, the clients that are constantly calling. They want to know, where am I at? Are you still coming? Can you still help me? When are you going to do this? And what's my status update? And they call today, they'll call in 2 days, they'll call in a week, they'll call in 2 weeks. It can seem a bit inconvenient. It can be a bit taxing sometimes to the staff. Dare say it can even be a bit annoying at times. But for many of the clients that we serve, they're calling because we represent possibly the last hope they have of that need in their life being met. We may be the only resource they're aware of that has any potential hope of helping them in their current situation. And they recognize that we are there to help them and to change their lives. And so in all of these things, we don't want to allow the quotas and quotients of the grant side. We don't want to allow some of what seem like maybe the petty annoyances of the interactions to cause us to blur our focus, to begin to jade us towards what our real is. And the priority is helping clients. And as we move on, we're going to look at, we're prioritizing clients over, and our next slide is going to show us, we're looking at that over production. Yes, we have contractually, as we're operating these programs, we've got quotas to meet. We have so many households to serve. We've got an average cost to maintain. We've got programs we're trying to braid. We're trying to figure this out. There's new guidance that comes, and we have SIRs to worry about, and we've got auditing techniques, and we've got CAS. There's all these things. We've got materials to order, trucks to load, crews to lay out their schedules for. There's all these things, all the minutia, all the mechanism that goes into production. And the production's critical if we're going to serve individuals, but we must have a vigilance to avoid the pitfall of being driven simply by units completed and dollars spent. It's much bigger than. They are critical data points. We're going to get to that later as we have time. We'll look at the importance of having dashboards and following these things and tracking these things and having a forward momentum where we're going as we plan out the grant for the year, for the month, for the week. But in all of the production, we want to make sure that we're vigilant to prioritize the people, the client, the family over just the production. Similarly, as we do production, we are looking for, and our focus in production should be implementing it from a perspective that enables us to serve more people in the best way possible. And we want to be as efficient and productive in our production as possible. But not only do we want to be in our client focus, be prioritizing clients over production and keep that client first perspective. But as we move forward into our next slide, we're going to notice that we also want to make sure that we're prioritizing the community. And in a second, we're going to say prioritizing over what? We're going to be prioritizing the community over just simple outcomes. As we help individuals, that has a direct and a kind of a ripple effect, but we're also helping the broader community that makes up where they live and the places where we live and we work and we shop, and we as a community, as we're helping one another and we're helping to change lives, it is helping to change the community as well and move it in a forward direction. When the community needs assessments are done by our organizations and we start seeing what those needs are, rather than just being a formality, and we say, okay, well, maybe we can write a grant for this or we can write a grant for that. We ought to look and see, how successful is my program being? I do have outcomes I report, but when the community needs assessments are coming out, are there ways that my programs can currently meet some of those touch points? Are there areas where we can expand or we can do more, that it dovetails very well with our current program, so that maybe a small adjustment begins to allow an enhanced service to meet a need that's been in that assessment that's been brought to our attention, rather than it just being a formality for future grants. May it be a tool that we can assess, how am I doing right now in meeting the needs through my programs, helping to not just helping people, changing lives, but helping communities and changing communities in a broader perspective of a sense of where am I at with my program and how am I doing there. We don't want to just get into the minutia of the daily grind of delivering a program that blurs our view of people and has that same effect of blurring that it's the community at large, and not just prioritizing the community that's out in the street, that's coming through the door, that's the household we're going to go audit, or it's the applicant we're helping process their application for services, or it's where the crew is working, or where the contractor is installing HVAC. But also remembering that the community is also is us. Our agency is a pillar in the community, and those that work in our agency are a part of that same community. And so as we're looking at things as program managers, and whatever your role may be, is prioritizing the community also that is our coworkers and are delivering the services, so that we can look for ways to maximize impact outside our doors, but also maximize that impact inside our doors, and making sure that our staff is well taken care of as far as salaries and things, making sure that we have the tools and technology that we need to stay current, to best analyze, to more effectively and efficiently perform the audits and the installation work, so that we can touch more households and have a broader impact. But if we're working with old things that are constantly broken, then it makes it difficult to really implement our program the way we need to. We want to prioritize the community so that we don't fall into missing the forest for the trees. We just get so lost in we're doing this and we're doing this, that we can get blurred and miss the individuals, but also we can get so caught up in just the program that we lose sight of the community that's all around us. It's in the building we work in, we're a part of it, but also those that we're serving. It's easy, as we'll look at next, that we want to prioritize the community over just simple outcomes. And so in our next slide, it just simply says that it's over the outcomes. We're in a climate that requires us to capture a lot of data to make sure that an applicant is eligible, a lot of information for the energy audit. There's a lot of things the auditor collects, has to put into the software that has nothing to do with the final work scope. But there's a lot of information we collect. There's a lot of information and documentation that the crew has as they're out doing the work and documenting the works, whether it's in forms, or it's in reports, or it's in the 300 pictures they have to take of their work, on top of the 300 pictures that the auditor took, on top of the 300 pictures like we have all this reporting, that all this information we're collecting to report and to demonstrate what we're doing, to solidify the impacts that we're having. But in that, we do a lot that also captures the demographics and various household information, and this can be very critical in making sure that we're not missing opportunities for wraparound services, or if you're in a place where your agency is utilizing the whole family approach, those points become very critical. But and as we report into whatever software you may be using to for Roma, to make sure that we're putting back and giving the information, the reports of what the programs have done and the lives they've touched and the households they've changed and the community impact, those are great things. But we don't want to just get lost in, we're doing things so that we can report it. We're out here doing this so we can say we did X number of houses, we spent so much dollars, here's the things we have here. It's easy in all the data collection to find ourselves looking at production and then just at outcomes rather than individuals and impacts. And so, and I know there's maybe a little semantics there between impacts and outcomes, but I'm looking at more of, it's the individual, it's the community, what we're really doing, not just what the stats that we can capture and pass forward. And so with that, and kind of having this mindset that we want to make sure that the people and the community, when we say community, it's not just the buildings and the streets and the neighborhood, but it's the essence of the individuals and the families that make up that community, that we keep that as our focus and not just activities that we do to assist in our local community. And so with that, at this time, we're going to shift into some breakout rooms, and I'm going to turn it back to Keisha this time as she introduces the breakout sessions and gives you guidance on how to enter into a breakout room and the activities there.
Okay, guys, I like a lot of interaction. So there are 3 questions that I put in the chat. If you are headed to group room 1, that's your first bullet. 2 is the second room, and third is room 3. I will be moderating room 1. Aderica will moderate room 2, and John will be in room 3. So take a look at the questions, and you will be given a breakout room momentarily. I may need your help, Aderica. Oh, wait, no, I don't. I'm sorry. All right. Okay. Great. Okay. You guys should be headed to your breakout rooms. Let's see. There should be a box, John, for you to just click
Yeah, it looks
on.
like it says room 1. I thought I was going to room 3.
Yeah. Did you click on?
I didn't click yet. It looked
Is
like
it?
it says join room 1. Am I 1 or 3?
You are 3. So just click on join,
Okay.
and then I'll head to room 1. Can you guys see the PowerPoint? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. All right. So room 1, John, I'll let you go ahead and talk about what.
Get unmuted there. Yeah, so we had a good discussion about some of the negative results, and one of the comments was there was a shift in the way the team was encouraged to approach things, and they found that it resulted in less client focus, less time spent with the client. And as they were seeing that and they were reporting it, the executive leadership decided that wasn't the direction that they wanted the agency to go in. And so they were able to make course corrections so that that didn't continue to have a less client interactive focus. And thankfully that occurred because it doesn't take long until that'll affect the culture, and then a less client focused culture is what you have, and it's all about production. So that was one. The other thing that we talked about is um, watching the pendulum when you're at a crunch time at the close of a program, and you can begin to feel that shift. Just making sure that shift doesn't continue once the pressure of closing out a program year and meeting goals is accomplished, that we make sure we're realigning with a client and community focus. So it was very good comments there.
Good. We'll turn it over to Derica, who was in room 2, moderating room 2.
We have our representative for room 2, which is going to speak on our behalf.
We all kind of shared that it really depends on, so our question was excuse me, the terms client community emphasized more than production and spend? And it really depends on the audience and the season. It can depend on whether you're talking to the funder, like state, federal, like for myself, I'm part of county government, or it can depend on the season, like when you're getting ready to finish out a grant year, or there's a grant ending. The other thing we talked about was that constant struggle between that of maybe some staff who are more client focused or clients facing, and others that are not, and how that can be a struggle to kind of balance that even just within the team.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, so my room talked about how an agency can keep a client and community focused amid the pressures of production and outcome goals. Okay, room 3, not everybody at once. I know Jordan said he had to step away for a moment. So I am going to let a representative go ahead and share with the group what we talked about. Don't make me call on you.
All
Oh,
right, I'll
Joseph, you
do
are
it.
awesome.
So I had mentioned that sort of if you are keeping a good enough eye on the community, depending on what your community looks like, and you're meeting them where their need is, your production and outcome will kind of just come naturally if you're going to where they need the service. And then we also had talks about how making sure you're openly communicating with clients as much as possible, giving them updates when you can. And we know there's people that will fall through the cracks sometimes because they only call once every so often versus the person that calls 5 times a day. And just trying to focus on making sure that that's not happening. And also when there's deferrals, having an understanding of your community and giving them at least some direction where they can go to try to get undeferred and back into your program, so that they don't feel like they've just been dismissed because there was something wrong with the house. I think
Absolutely.
that just about covers it.
Good stuff. Thank you, Joseph. Good job. Good job. I think it's really important to make sure that the client knows that we see them. They are just not a number in our production. There's just not part of the data that we gather for our reporting or for our Roma or things like that. that they know that we see them, we see their need, and we understand, and we're there for them in weatherization. And also, trying to make sure that if they need other services in the agency that we are in, that we can also, refer them to that as well. So good job, good stuff, good stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and start the second part of our presentation. And this is section 2 with John. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to John.
All right, yeah. So in this next section, we're going to be looking at measuring and evaluating organizational performance. And in this first part, we're going to be looking at developing implementation plans to meet objectives and meeting objectives without dropping the ball. Again, because of time constraints, we could, if anyone that knows me, I can talk for hours, I can talk for days, but we just have a little bit of time. So this is going to be very much kind of a flyover as we touch on some of these things. So as we move into the next slide, we're going to find that on it, these are some of the things that we would just kind of highlight to say you want to take give some attention to if you're going to have operational excellence. And this is in the side of task management, in the actual productivity, rather than client management, rather than closeout management. These are some of the things that are more in the direct task management side of it. And first of all, these elements here, you can see obviously you're going to need to develop a plan, and then establish efficient processes so that you can deploy the right resources. And then you want to make sure that you're keeping your finger on the pulse, that you can quickly, in 15 minutes, you can pull up with your team or with leadership team and say, okay, here's where we're at, here's where we're going, here we're above our average cost, here's how we're going to correct that. You have all that stuff at your fingertips. Doing a follow-up and getting feedback from your team. From some of that's going to be follow-up and feedback that you're getting from the client. Some of it's going to be follow-up and feedback you get from management, and learning how to hear and to implement. Not everything not all the feedback you get is going to be actionable. Some of the feedback, there are some things you should not be dismissive of, and there are some feedback you just need to just dismiss it. Take it with a grain of salt, let it just roll off you. Just because no matter what you do, sometimes you can never satisfy certain individuals, and that's not just clients. Sometimes that's management. Sometimes that's there are just some people in some situations that can't be satisfied. So learning how to receive and follow up and get feedback, make the necessary course corrections. But it's kind of hard to make course corrections if you don't know where you're going. If you don't have a plan, and we're going to get into that now as in our next section here, is developing a plan to meet objectives. You'll often hear me say that grant management plans are it's kind of like the combination that we turn to get into. Remember, like back in the day when I was in school, you had a locker and you turn to the right, turn to the left, turn back to the right. You could unlock it and get to your stuff. The most important thing for me was getting to my lunch. Others, it was their calculus book or whatever. I wanted to get to my lunch. But a lot of times our grant management plans don't become much more than the locker combination to open the door to get to the funds, to get access. And then all of a sudden we just kind of fall back into, this is how we've always done it. This is what we did last month. We'll just keep doing it. And we don't really have a plan. Without a plan, you can't really develop really high functioning processes. If you don't have good processes, you're not going to develop really sound procedures. If you don't have a good plan and process and procedures, then you're going to have, most likely you wind up with stagnant standard operating procedures that have been handed down from generations before, and they're not really relevant maybe to current guidance. They're not really relevant to the current staff whose role and responsibility is, let alone your current real operation. So there are no longer standard operating procedures. So it's imperative to have a plan so that you can have processes, so that you can develop the procedures, and out of those processes and procedures, now you start saying, okay, we need a policy here. We don't have a policy that covers this. We need to write a policy. This policy's outdated. Here's the things we're doing now. We need to update not just operating procedures, but what our current program policies are. Once you have those things in place, you've got a plan and you're working through your process, you've got your procedures, then you can start looking at the personnel. Now you can really know whose role and responsibility this should be, who's best suited for this, who has the potential to do this, and we just need to do a little training, a little upskilling. And then as you're able to have the right people in the right place, knowing what they need to do to accomplish the goal, to meet the plan, then we can really have high functioning, effective, efficient production that isn't layered with a lot of embedded cost. And those embedded costs is where we're not operating efficiently. And because of that, we have limited funds to work with. And the higher our embedded costs are, the less funds we have available to serve the community with, the less funds we have available to serve our staff with, as far as raises and other things. And so having these things is critical. Part of it is a well-orchestrated plan allows a well-oiled machine to achieve excellence. You can have a really smooth operating machine, but if you don't have a good plan, they don't know where they're going, then it all just kind of, it bottlenecks. And so we don't want our planning to bottleneck and frustrate our team as they're trying to serve and deliver to the clients. The other thing about this whole planning process, and again, we're short on time, is we often talk about strategic planning and also in succession planning, but this allows you to begin to develop role and responsibility planning so that it's clearly laid out so that each role in your department, if something happens, triumph or tragedy, you can clearly onboard someone else, whether it's temporary or permanently. This allows you to clearly and effectively onboard them so that they're not frustrated in the process and our community doesn't go underserved in our onboarding process. That too often is a greater struggle than it needs to be. And some of that reflects back on our departmental strategic planning from this kind of perspective. This is going to allow us to handle, as I mentioned earlier, the quotas and the quotients. The quotas, the number of households to serve, the distribution of those households across our service territories, the quotients, those factors of like average cost per unit, the WAP rank, budgetary limitations, programmatic limitations. By having this plan in place, it's going to allow you to handle all those things in a very fluid motion because you already know where we're going, how we're handling it, our operating procedures, our process, our policies. It's current and relevant, and everybody on the team is on the same page so that we're not operating how it used to be, or this works. Okay, it might work, but it might not be the best way. And so that kind of leads us, as we're developing a plan to meet objectives, part of a meeting objectives as we move into our next slide is the idea that we're trying to do this without dropping the ball. More than once, I have to admit, I've dropped the ball, probably more times than I would like to admit. But if we have the right plan, and again, the right process and procedures, that automatically begins to limit the amount of times that someone is likely to drop the ball. And some of that's unintentional. But part of it also is having effective production management is going to require a situational awareness, the ability to understand what the end goal is, what is the broad brush plan, but also to analyze the current situation, what's currently in the pipeline, what's coming up, to be able to identify impacting variables. We have the holidays that are coming, or we've got hunting season, or the weather's been inclement and we've not been able to get out to these households. What are those impacting variables? Determining what other hurdles may be there. There's for a while there was supply shortages and you couldn't get insulation, you couldn't get this is back ordered. So realizing what are the hurdles and being able to develop a course of action to deploy resources to navigate those things and overcome. If we're doing these things and planning, we'll be able to not drop the ball in that side of it, but also as we're doing our planning, that's also going to include the elements of having a production philosophy and a spending philosophy, having guiding principles that allow for consistent, effective decision making that doesn't always have to go back to one individual person. It's providing so people know what the plan is, what the process is, what the procedures are, what their role is in that, and what their responsibilities. So they know the ball didn't get dropped because I know I'm responsible for it. I know what I'm supposed to do with it. I know what I'm supposed to do, when I'm supposed to do it, how I'm supposed to do it, and more importantly, I know why I'm supposed to do it. And because of that, I'm not dropping the ball. And so as we have these things, it allows individuals to know what is the kind of the latitude and longitude, the whether you want to call it the sandbox, whatever term you want to use. It allows them to know the functional workspace they have to operate. And because they know how to do it, they can be confident and comfortable taking steps, taking the ball, running with it to make things happen, to fulfill the objectives of our common mission without always having to say, well, let me go check on this. They also know when they need to get permission, when they need to ask. They know where the baton is going to get handed off. They know how to communicate things, where to communicate things, so that everybody that needs to be in the loop is kept in the loop. So I'm not dropping the ball, but together we're not going to drop the ball when we go to hand it off or we make the pass. So these are all those elements that are going to equip the team with the perspective they need. It's going to equip them with the resources they need, so that they know this is my role, this is my responsibility, it's my turn to keep this ball from dropping it. And then when I hand it off, it's very clear you've got the ball. The ball's in your court now. You're taking it, and we're following up together. And also, as we'll come to later, having those things in a central, simplified dashboard is also one of those ways we can quickly as a team meet and assess who's doing what, where we're at. We can see the movement of activity so that a manager doesn't have to micromanage, but they can be engaged and aware of where the team's at so they can help if something feels like it's falling off the radar. They may not be intentionally dropping the ball. It may just be falling off their radar. And having those things in place and planning accordingly allows a team leader or a manager to be able, or supervisor to say, hey, what about this? And I say, oh yeah. And before the ball's dropped, it's brought back on radar. It's brought back onto the horizon. It's something that they pick back up and take action. It didn't get dropped. It was just fell a little closer to the ground than we would prefer. But it's still moving forward the way we want it to. One of the things is from emerging leaders or as active leaders, this is something that will allow you to delegate with confidence. You're going to be able to hand it over to the team and not feel like you have to you don't have to juggle everything. You're not the one there juggling 15 balls. You're not the one in this room trying to keep it all in the air, because you've laid out the plan. You've laid out the process. You've given the procedures. You've assigned the individuals. So instead of me trying to keep it all going, I've got people, they know what they need to keep going, and they're going to keep it going. And so it allows us to delegate with confidence, where we're going to follow up, but we don't feel the need to micromanage or the burden. There's a great burden that comes with when you feel like you've got to keep all those balls in the air. As we look at the picture here, you got to keep it all up, got to keep it all going. But knowing that as a team collectively, we have a pathway that we're going to confidently, comfortably meet all of our objectives. We're going to serve our community. We're going to be client focused. We're going to also be contractual focused. We know what our goals are, and we're in this together, and we know it's moving forward. And so that it's one of those things that it gives you the confidence you need to delegate. It gives them confidence when they're delegated to. They know what to do with it. They know I can keep it in the air. They're not overwhelmed. They're not perplexed. They're not uncertain. They're not in a place where hopefully the culture and our environment is they can come with questions. They can admit, hey, I need some upskilling. I'm not strong in this area. Can you give me some pointers? Can you give me some training? And they can receive, you can delegate with confidence, they can receive with confidence and move forward comfortably knowing I know how to do this. And if I get stuck, someone's going to be there to help me, because we together have a plan to meet our objectives. And so with that in mind, I think that does bring us time-wise nearing into our second breakout.
Sorry, guys, give me one
And the
second.
range back to teacher.
I was putting them in the chat. Yes. Okay, so this is going to be questions for everybody. There's not a specific question for like each room because it's one question with some subsets. So we are going to break out again. Okay, let's see. Let's see if we can recreate. So everybody's in a different room. Okay. You guys should be getting notifications. Okay, John and Aderica. John, you want to stick with well, it looks like Aderica's in 1. You're 2, so I'm heading back to 3. Okay. Let me go back to sharing my screen. I always forget to unmute myself and I'm just talking. Okay, my not lit up. Can you guys see the PowerPoint? Okay, good. 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 Okay. So Crystal, you're remind me of that agency you're at again?
I'm at Ninth District Opportunity.
Oh, okay. Let me just tell you how old I am. When I came when I came in, there was a young lady by the name of Mary Nell Gooch who was at Ninth District.
And
I don't
I've
know if
heard
you
the
ever
name,
heard.
but I've never met her.
Yeah, that gives you a little bit of insight of how long I've been around. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Okay, so are we all back? Looks like it. John, were you in room one or was it Derica? Were you room two?
I think I was room 2.
Okay, so I'll turn it over to Derica. So
Okay.
she
Well,
let her group share.
yes, we had a great discussion, and I'm going to kick it off to Tara, and Peter's going to chime in to assist.
So Peter and I were talking and kind of pinging off of each other during our discussion, and we said one of the most successful things to do is to really dig into your grant once you get it, and to know what's in there. Um, what I my what I'd like to do is really create like a chart of work or use a calendar to map out all of the data points that I have to achieve, whether it be a report that needs to go in or the last day to do work on something. I use the same strategy when we have our monitoring. Once we get that packet, is I dig into it and just map out who needs to help in what areas. And a lot of times I go back after our monitoring and use that to adjust what I may have fallen short on from the year prior. I think I'm bouncing around in more questions than I was supposed to answer at this point, but that's what I got. Peter?
Well, I think what Tara really impressed me with is laying out a timeline at the beginning of a grant, something I thought I was doing until I heard her talk about it, and I think I have room for improvement. And then also talking about really leaning in to see what strengths your staff have and utilize your staff instead of just having a downward management style, telling them what to do using their strengths and getting their input.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talked about geography, which was a lot of fun.
Nice, nice. So all right, John, you're up.
Yes, so we had a good discussion as well, and I failed in the last time to get a spokesperson. This time I didn't drop that ball, and so I'm gonna kick it over to Jordan.
Yeah, so we had a very pragmatic conversation to start where we frankly just discussed that for things like DOE funds, agencies should be prioritizing spending that bucket down so that they're ensuring that for future uh, financial years, allocations aren't being rolled back. But as far as if they're having struggle spending down those funds, making sure that they're being effective communicators. We talked about how in at least the state of Colorado, we have a supportive energy office who wants to work with our agencies and help us spend our money, but they only know what they know. And a lot of times they just are not aware of some of the problems that we're facing on the front end. So having an open line of dialogue with your state office, if they are receptive and helpful. We also talked about how in several states, there's usually utility funding to help flesh out and support additional weatherization, but that a lot of times the people on the front lines aren't always aware that there are different funding sources. And because of that, there might be several opportunities where houses are not getting the full service that sometimes they need to be able to get even more WAP services done, or they're just not getting the help they need at all. So finding ways to be communicative throughout the large pipeline that exists and making all this work possible.
Good stuff. I have a question for you, Jordan. However, so in communication, what do you think that some of the things that some of the balls that can be dropped on communication, like what could slip through the cracks or what's easily looked over and how can that be avoided?
I think sometimes it can be hard to find the right point of contact. I think speaking from the perspective of the energy office trying to connect with someone at an agency who can kind of give feedback. So maybe figuring out if there is someone who makes sense as being a point of contact around this type of topic. And maybe as far as communicating, if there are additional funds from utilities, maybe figuring a way to braid that into your already existing onboarding or training as you bring in new workers to work with your program.
Mm. Good stuff. It's important to have a good onboarding plan when you are, bringing on your new staff because we all know weatherization stays the same. It's always the same. It never changes, right? Never. Okay, all right. Did anybody want to add anything to that? Any thoughts? Or I can move on to my group. Okay, well, I will move on to my group. Now, Joseph was nice enough to speak for us last time. So, Barb, can I get you to speak for us? If not, then, maybe you and Crystal can do a tag team. Is that okay? All right. You have the floor.
Oh, sorry, find my notes. We talked really about the ways that we try to keep track of the things in our grants and the things that we have to do and how we're making sure that we don't drop the ball on the things. And Crystal was talking about the importance of the spreadsheets that are utilized to track all the things that have to be managed in a grant, like for weatherization grants, as we all know, the certificates and those types of things, and how there's always something you seem to miss, and how each year you kind of adjust and find a way to try and make that include that in, and so you're not missing it.
Yeah, each year you learn something new to add or
Yeah.
something you can take away.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny because we're just talking about this in our agency because there was a contract. I had it down on my sheet wrong, on my spreadsheet wrong, and so I had the date of it ending wrong, and so we talked a lot about that. And I was telling our group, I wish I could get my spreadsheet to talk to my Outlook calendar, because I live and die by that calendar apparently. But yeah, just it would be. There's so many, for me, there's so many different programs we use. We have a specific program we have to use for the state. And I feel like there's so many things that you're in that it's easy to miss one. And so you can have all the spreadsheets and all the things in the world, and human error ends up getting us, and all these things end up getting us. And so trying to find those ways to just continue to improve it. And I think, like you just said, weatherization always stays the same. And I mean, if it would stay the same for 6 months, I think I would be thrilled. And it was interesting in our group, there were 5 of us, and 2 of our, it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. There were 2 individuals about a year or less in, a year-ish in, and I can remember that overwhelming feeling of seeing all of those things that you have to keep track of. I'm like, you want me to remember what? And then you're seeing it on this huge spreadsheet. And, you know, I think it's also important to remember to bring in those, we talked about, you know, the Excel person, you always have like a person who's like, that's their thing. And, you know, really leaning on those people that's their strength. And, you know, I'm not an Excel person. I don't know how to do those formulas, and I don't know how to make them do those fancy things. And, yeah, if I can, you know, get somebody to help me make my job easier, and, you know, then it's, it kind of makes things a little bit better. And if somebody else, we've really focused on making sure that other people know what these things mean that we're doing. Like, I can't be the only one that knows anything about weatherization, because I could drop off the face of the earth tomorrow. Then what? If nobody knows what this means. So we've really been intentional about making sure that there's, you know, are they going to know the CSPM to the nth degree? Like, I might know, but at least they'll know where to find it, what to look for, what
Right,
these
and that's
jobs and
what-
process mean. And so really trying to find ways to make it that if somebody needed to open up that book and look at it, at
That's
least
what
know where
we've
to
been
start.
trying to do is get everybody cross-trained on our, you know, on our end.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot that I do that they don't know, and vice versa. So we have been doing a lot of cross-training.
Yeah, cross training. I'm a fan. Derek will probably tell you, I'm always like, we need to cross train somebody, because what happens if I win the lottery? I'm just gonna leave.
Oh, no, you're not.
What
Well, no,
happens? What
I think
happens
Very
if I
honest.
want to go somewhere fabulous for like a month?
Well, and somebody
What?
mentioned it last time about, like sometimes taking the team who doesn't ever leave the office and taking them out. And we were really intentional
I
about that.
did. Your
Starting
office
a couple of
staff.
years ago. It's like,
Yes.
they don't know what it's like to go out on an audit. What is that like? And so,
Mhm.
yeah, we made sure they went out and did that with our auditors to see what that process looks like, because they're trying to explain it to a client and they're like, oh yeah, it's fine, it's easy. Well, these guys are there for several hours, and, you know, these are the things they're doing and the things they're into. And so, yeah, and then they would sit down in on appointments with the intake staff. What is that like? What does that look like? You know?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. And it also helps too for those agencies that utilize Neat Mia. You know, just say for instance, years ago, years and years ago, when I first came into weatherization, we had the field staff, but they would bring back the information for me to put into the Neat Mia. And I'm looking at this going, what? You know? So I had to get out there and like figure out what is all this stuff they're sending me. It's like, so I had to make it go from the language that it was looking like to something I understood. So I think it's really important to have your administrative staff, you know, go out with the guys for a week. You know what I mean? I promise you they will learn to, you know, really, it'll open their eyes to what goes on in the field and vice versa, you know? And then you kind of get that little bit of cross training in there, even if it's only for a week.
yeah.
Jeanette, did you want to add anything? We got another minute. Nope, you're good?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. All right, good stuff. Annabelle, I haven't heard from you. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, well, I was just, in my group, I was just, talking about here in Washington State, we kind of have we have what's called the funding matrix. And it's kind of a guide of how Commerce would like us to use the funding. Like which grants we use first. They've gone away from it with this new policy update that they've done to our program, but it was a very nice way to like, okay, you use this pocket of money first, and you know, after that you use this one, and it was a nice little layout of how to spend, and it really helped me. And then within the, I also just mentioned in our group that, you know, there's certain pockets of money that it's kind of hard to spend because we, like, for one, it's the readiness money. We don't have a high deferral rate, so we kind of, you know, those budget line items and within the contracts, have to spend those out too, so it makes it kind of hard to, spend some of that too. So that's kind of what I shared in my group.
It's amazing how each agency has its own thing that makes them unique and makes them tick, and they know how to bring it together and make it work. So, and that's all part of weatherization. We make it work, right? We know how to make it work. Okay, John, I'm gonna turn it back over to you to pick up where you left off and go on into the next section.
All right. So the second half, or part B of section 2, is we'll look at some ways of measuring and evaluating organizational performance. Again, we could speak for days, hours on a lot of this stuff, but we're just going to kind of brush by 2 parts of it. And then there's a third focus that I forgot to put on here, but establishing efficient processes, deploying the right resources, and then also utilizing dashboards for clear communications that allow us to do critical thinking to have effective responses and directions moving forward. So our first part of that is going to be in the idea of establishing efficient processes. Our goal is to, we talked about making sure that we're keeping a client focus. We're keeping a community focus. It's not just about quotas and quotients. It's not just meeting the numbers, spending the dollars, reaching goals, but it is helping people, changing lives. And as we do that, we want to make sure that our process, we get from intake to invoice as smoothly and in some ways as quickly. I'm not saying rush everything where everybody feels pressure, like I've only got, it's kind of like in the medical field where the doctor's got 10 minutes to tell you everything and that's it. 5 minutes. And the time seems like every time it seems like you go to the doctor, they have less time to talk to you. And it's kind of like, I understood it when I went to the dentist, that the dental hygienist did everything and the doctor came in and dentist came in, counted my teeth, took my money and was gone. But through the years, I've expected a little more conversation, a little more help from my doctor, and it feels like we're getting less of that. We don't want our process to be a rushed process, but we want it to be an efficient process. We don't want it to take any longer to do intake, any longer to do audit, any longer to get work scopes and bids back, any longer to do installs or to close out an invoice than necessary. Part of it is the longer it takes to do a task that's not needed, the more people it takes to do those tasks collectively. If it's going to take, if it takes me a whole week to do one thing, when I should be able to do 2 things in that week, then there's 2 of us doing one thing each a week when there could be 1 of us doing the 2 things in that week. And I'm not saying that we're looking to eliminate positions, but we can potentially redeploy as we're looking to expand, or we have other vacancies and positions we're looking to hire, other opportunities. We may be able to redeploy individuals into different roles, because the more people it takes to do a given task unnecessarily, the less all of those people can make doing that task. The same thing happens when the crew is out there doing the work. The longer it takes to do the work, the more crews or the more contractors you need to have to do that work. But there's my bigger concern there is the more days that the client may have to miss work. Their staycation might be getting weatherized. They may not have been planning to go to Disney World, but they may have had some other plans of things they wanted to do. It might have been locally. They wanted to go here. They're going to go visit someone. They're going to be away for the weekend at family. But now they're using all their PTO to get their house weatherized. And then when it took us too long to do it, they burn up the PTO they had planned for it. Now they're trying to find some other responsible adult to be there to let people in. Or we're undermining our mission because now they're taking unpaid leave to let us in their house. There comes a point where we don't want to, just like in the application and certifying and recertifying, we want a process that is enjoyable, that is pleasant, that is something they're going to refer others. Hey, this was a great experience. We've all been places where it's not a great experience. One of those happens all the time at the checkout now. You tap your card, and it's actually I think it's faster to write a check. I got to answer this question and put in this number, and no, I don't want this, and no, I don't need this, and the reality, I said it to a cashier, and she's like, yeah, actually, if you don't even have to fill the checkout, if you hand it to me, I just run it through. It is technically faster. We don't want our technology, we don't want what we think is an improvement to make our process less efficient. It should always be moving in a way that is smoother, that is easier, that's more enjoyable for us that are implementing it and those that are seeking to receive it. Overcomplicated processes along that way delays that productivity, delays the desired outcomes, delays our ability to help individuals. And the more overcomplicated it's going here, and then we got to do this, and we got to do that, and it just bounces around, and it never feels like it's getting anywhere. That cripples delivery, our delivery service. Also, when new programs, whether it's utility or it's an appliance program, or whatever it is, sometimes there's a place to get fancy with programs. If you're humming along, you're spending, you're reaching goals, you're doing things, everything's, you're operating very effectively and efficiently, and you're finding there's other resources, there's more opportunity, then you can start layering on a more nuanced, a kind of a fancy approach to things. Sometimes people try to do things too fancy with new funding or with current funding, and in the process, it just bogs everything down because there's that much more effort that goes into trying to get something done that's really not a direct component of the program itself. We're trying to build in this, whether it's a manager's or it's a agency philosophy. We're going to try to do this. We're going to try to, and it just begins to creep in there, and it begins to bog things down. One of my personal concerns along this line is with wraparound services or whole family that we don't so overload the client with requests and with options when they're just trying to keep their lights on. They're just trying to keep the heat and still be able to eat something besides ramen noodles in the middle of winter. Like they're trying to navigate that. Not that they don't appreciate these other things, but there's a danger of overburdening and burning them out with inundating them with all of these things. And so having an efficient process that makes things flow smooth for the client and also for our agency allows us to have the greatest community impact, both the community that's outside our doors as well as the community that's inside our doors, and making the overall process enjoyable for everyone. With that, once you have those efficient processes that have reduced the embedded costs, that you are looking at kind of taking the Kaizen approach of where are the bottlenecks, where are the friction points, and finding out what's it going to take to free that up to keep this moving. Why is it always stop here? What do we got to do to keep things moving at a good pace, not a rush pace, a good pace? Then we find ourselves looking at, okay, we want to make sure we're deploying the right resources. You're going to notice that some of the things I'm going to mention here is about the team. Sometimes we think about deploying the right resources. For example, having the right training and technical assistance. We think, oh, the crew leader's getting his CAS training. He's got lead certification. He's got RIT. He's got crew leader, whatever it is. On the same hand, are we making sure that we're getting the right training and technical assistance for our office staff? Are we making sure that they have access to Office 365 trainings and things like that? Are we making sure they're getting the technical training and assistance they need? A lot of times that are interesting. There's industry. There's a lot of focus on the technical T&TA for the implement for those out doing the work, and sometimes we miss the opportunities and the real need to make sure that we're getting that for the entire team, those that are doing intake, those that are doing the install, those that are doing the inspection, but also those that are doing the invoicing and the closeout. Is the team getting the certifications or role specific trainings and technical assistance they need? We want to make sure we're setting everybody up for success. So as they're deployed, they can confidently and comfortably go about their task effectively and efficiently. They need to have the right tools and equipment. We often think of, okay, they got the new blower door, they've got the right truck, they've got these different things, but also again, we come back to the office. Do they have, is it just a desktop? Do they have a laptop in case they need to work remote? Do they have a monitor? Do they have two monitors? Are they 18 inches deep? There's no room on their desk because the monitors are on there, or is it a slim screen? Is their mouse wireless, or is there still cables everywhere? Like, are you, you don't want a workman's comp liability because of all the cables that are on someone's desk. Like, so those become some of the things like, does the team have the right tools? Do they have the right training and technical assistance? Does the team have the right tools and equipment they need in their role so that we're deploying them with the resources they need, that they're set up for success? Also along this line, does the team have the right materials on hand? Obviously, we think about insulation, we think about ventilation fans, we think about these things. Does the office staff, again, I keep coming back to the office staff, do they have the materials that they need? And it may not be as much. When we think about materials and tools, if you're going to sit in a chair all day, you might want to get a really nice chair, not the cheapest thing from Costco. I don't recommend for the crews, nothing against Ryobi, but I would probably recommend DeWalt or Milwaukee for the tools that the crews are using every day. They're more durable. They're ergonomically, they're designed better. The battery has a better life. The same way I don't necessarily recommend the cheapest Costco chair for someone who has to sit in it for 8 hours a day. One, just the longevity health wise, also their day-to-day, hour by hour comfort, fatigue, pleasure in being at work. I'd much rather sit in a recliner than on a stool. But that's just me. I tend to pace anyhow, so I'm kind of a fidgety person. But making sure they have the right training, the right technical assistance, the right tools, the right equipment, the right materials that they can be deployed. You're going to deploy them. You expect them to do things. We've given them an efficient process. We've plugged them into it. Do they have the resources to operate at an excellent level, or are we expecting them to do a whole lot more than what we're giving them to work with? The other thing is make sure that the team, if we're going to deploy the right resources, we want to make sure the team has the right time and attention. There's a danger that they get pulled in 1,000 different directions. They get sidetracked over to this task or that task. And can you help me with this? And especially the people that are the most effective at what they do, it seems like if you want something done, ask someone that's busy, because they always seem to find a way to get it done. So the danger, though, is you want to make sure that you're not always overleaning on certain people, to where overloading them, to where some people are coasting. They're on Facebook, they're out on a smoke break, they're just chilling while someone else is getting it done, where you begin to, one, it can break the good morale. You could burn that person out. They start looking for other opportunities. But ultimately, we don't want to pull people in 1,000 different directions. We want to make sure that they have the time and attention. They have the everything else they need, so that we plug them into our process. They know the plan, they know the procedures, they know the policies. They're able now, that personnel, that person in their role and responsibility, they have all, you've given them all the resources they need, whether they're in the office, on intake, or on invoice side, whether they're out in the field as the implementer or the doer out there of the activities, whatever it is, we're giving them the resources they need to be successful. The better equipped everyone is, the more efficient we can be, but also the much better or the higher quality of overarching service from intake to invoice. The client experience and client impact is enhanced by making sure we're deploying the right resources. It brings us into our next section, and that's going to be dashboards for giving us functional information or data at a glance. And so I am running short on time. If I wasn't talking fast already, I'm going to talk even faster now. And so in this section here about the dashboard, you'll notice, if you go back one slide for me there, Keisha, or two now, you'll notice that we're looking at a dashboard. The dashboard is behind your steering wheel, below your windshield. It's in a place where at a glance, you can see critical information. It tells me whether I have oil pressure. It doesn't necessarily tell me what the oil temperature is. I appreciate it when it tells me I need to change the oil, but I don't need to know what the oil temperature is. I don't need to know what brand the oil is. I don't need to, like, there's a lot of information that I don't need driving down the road that my mechanic might find very helpful. And when he plugs his computer in, it gives him all kinds of information. I don't need that to get where I'm going. I have to know where I'm going. That's what keep my eyes on that through my windshield. I need to be able to steer and make the corrections that I need to, when to accelerate, when to slow down. Some of that's going to show up on my dashboard. What we want to do is make sure that we're capturing relevant, reliable, relatable information. It's in that kind of information that we're capturing. There's a place where you need the client's zip code. There's a place where you need their phone number. It's not on a dashboard. You may want their name, or you may want their project number. You may or may not need their address in this location. You want to make sure that it's relevant, it's reliable, it is current, and it is accurate, and it's relatable. It's something you can communicate on, because that kind of information, as you capture that information and put it in a central, simple to access for everybody on the team that they can get to, you can use in meetings or independently. It enlightens our decision making. If you don't have that information, you're kind of in the dark making a decision. And sometimes you can make a knee-jerk response, or you can make a decision that later on you're like, you know what? We really didn't need to do that. If I would have known X, Y, or Z, we would have done A, B, or C instead, but instead we did this. So having relevant, reliable, relatable information that we're capturing at a simple, centralized location enlightens our decision making. Because we have it there, and it is enlightening our decision making. That enlightenment brings us to the point of analyzing data. So in our dashboard, we're able to analyze it. We're able to make that critical alignment of quotas and quotients. How many units I've done, what my average cost per unit is, what my agency costs are. I'm able to take all that. I'm able to analyze those things and critically align it. Here's where we're out of line. Here's where we are in line. We're underspent. We're overspent. Our costs are high here. We're not utilizing other funding sources as we could or as we planned. What's going on? Because we've captured that information to enlighten our decision making process, it empowers us now in making our decisions. We know we're making a decision with confidence. It's not, it feels right. No, I know this is the right decision. There are some things we're just going to have to go with, where it's going to be what feels right. It's kind of a gut. We need to make a decision now. We don't have time to think. We barely have time to think. We don't have time to analyze. We got to do something. That's going to happen. That's part of it. But that shouldn't be always flying by the seat of our pants, always off the cuff decisions, just whatever pops in our brain, like, yeah, let's do this. Because we have information we've captured that enlightens our decision making, we can review that, we can discuss that, and it empowers our decision making. As we make that, we know I'm confident I'm making the right decision. It also allows us to respond. We're not just knee-jerk reactions, but we're able to make calculated responses that establish our decision making. We enlighten it by capturing it. We empower it because we can analyze it. As we're seeing that information come in and we make course corrections, it establishes, hey, we've been making the right choices. We can see in real time that I made the right choice. Here's the results of that. Here's how things are realigning. It brings it all together so that it is something that is functional. There's a deep dive somewhere else, but right in front of me for my team and for going into meetings with management and executive leadership, I can quickly pull up and say, here's where we're at, here's where we're off, here's the path we're taking, and they'll be able to see, just like you, that your decision making is enlightened, that it's empowered, and that you're establishing that we're on the right path. And so the next slide kind of brings us over to this idea of determining what I say is the minimal critical information. The right software or softwares and systems. I'm going to read this. This is probably my most text heavy slide you'll ever see from me. I normally use just billboards. I put up a billboard, there's a picture, there's one statement, and we just roll with it. Part of it's I'm not a very strong reader, so that's part of it. But the right software and systems are integral, like they're essential. They need to be the warp and woof. They need to be woven into the fabric of what we're doing if we're going to have effective data management, if we're going to effectively move through the information. If we don't effectively manage the information, we're not going to effectively manage our program. We're not going to effectively impact our community. We're not going to effectively serve our clients. And as they're integrated throughout the process, it needs to be an intuitive interface. It needs to be something that is easy for the team to use. If it's easy to use and there's a seamless interaction, then they'll find that if it's just part of their daily life, part of their daily activity, it's these minimal points, it's the critical points, they know why, they know what, it's quick to plug in there, it's easy to work with. And then they begin to see the benefits of putting that information, having at their own fingertips, then it'll work its way to helping us with effective production through efficient processes. So when we say efficient and functional data management, it is essential to effective grant management. Too often, we're pulled by unseen forces of uncaptured data. It's just things are pushing us around. And had we captured the information before, the things that we're facing now, 6 months in, had we seen it 2 months ago, we wouldn't be in the pickle we're in. We're not in the jam. We wouldn't be in the storm we're facing now. We wouldn't be hazarding some of the winds of the grant that we're facing now had it been captured, that we could be enlightened to, we could be empowered in our steps, and then now we'd be looking back and it would be establishing, yeah, we're making the right decisions. So I encourage you, minimal critical data in a central place where everybody can pull up, see it, and converse, communicate around it. And then as everybody goes back to their role and responsibility, they're going to have their deep dive information to effectively do their part. But this is that pull it up to where you can allow people. This helps people in new managers, new leaders, that as they're trying to learn how to pull up from the daily grind and get that long view, that horizon view, this kind of information helps them to start saying, okay, here's the broader scope of my new role as a manager or as a superintendent or whatever, that elevated out of the direct task into a supervisual role. This helps them as they make that transition, because there is a lot of times a void in that transition. So with that, I'm nearing the end of my time. I'm going to turn it back to Keisha, and thank you again for your time and attention.
Thanks, John. Always good stuff coming from John. So here I have to put up the QR codes. If you're not subscribed to Weatherization Plus, please do subscribe. It'll keep you in the know of various things we have coming up, and also any new things we learn from DOE. We try to get it out to the network. And of course, there is our social media QR code. Okay. So real quick, if you could drop in the chat, what did you think about today? How are you feeling about the things we talked about? Versus what you came in talking about, strategies and grant management and being effective. Drop a word in the chat about how you're feeling about today. And let me just give you a reminder, the next cohort date is October 23rd. I will, of course, send out an email reminder as always. And the next topic is 2.2. 2.2, and it'll be talking about crews versus contractors. Now, I know we have some agencies that use both, so be thinking about the type of model that you have in your agency, what makes it tick, what could make it function better, so that way we can discuss among each other and exchange ideas. And also keep in mind that October is Energy Awareness Month, and it is also Weatherization Day, October 30th. So in saying that, NCAP would like to be a part of anything that you are doing for Weatherization Day. We want to be boots on the ground. That means traveling. If you want me to come to your agency and be a part of what you're doing for Weatherization Day, give me an email and I will do my best to be there. Now, Annabelle, I think you're in California. That's a big hint. Like, no, you're in Washington State. Sorry, right? That's right. Somebody in here is in California. I forgot. But that's a big hint. Like, hey,
Jamie is in California.
that's right. That's right. Just kidding. Just kidding. But we want to know if you're doing things for Weatherization Day, we want to spotlight you. We want to make sure your agency, gets noticed. So that way we can share what's going on in our network. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything they would like to share? Oh, Peter, okay, we're hosting an event for WAP Day. What are you guys doing? Peter, can you share quickly?
Yeah, we're gonna if this all works out correctly, we're gonna be at a client's house with a contractor either finishing a job, doing an active press release. Then we'll still be inviting everybody from the governor to the mayor to
Nice.
anybody who wants to show up, and try to have it involved with an actual weatherization home.
Nice, nice. So, if we can find one of our staff members to head your way, would you be the point of contact?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. We thank you for that. Jordan, you said you're putting together a lunch and learn tour of local trade schools for
Yeah, this
Energy Out
is
West Colorado. Yeah, go ahead and explain.
yeah. So this is really something that I found to be very easy. I've reached out to some of the local training providers that are, upskilling people interested in this type of work, and they've always been very interested in connecting with more employers and people who are looking to hire. So there's never been any like effort to get them to find a date where they could bring up people in and show them facilities and present their stuff. So this one falls on Weatherization Day. We had 4 of these in the spring where we checked out local area pre-apprenticeships.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's happening.
Local trade schools, and in doing that, with the trade schools, once they're finished, are you guys doing like an apprenticeship with them, or are you looking to hire when they complete their schooling?
So it can depends. A lot of it is helping connect some of the subcontractors that we work with to sources of qualified and trained labor for when they're looking to hire, but also it kind of goes both ways because a lot of these local providers don't always know what weatherization is or what WAP is. So by coming to them and bringing some of the weatherization agencies, those are new connections that they weren't always aware of. And I mean, all of this draws from the skilled trade. So that's just more opportunity for people who know that they want to work in something like HVAC to then progress into a career.
Nice.
Nice.
Nice. Good stuff. Okay, guys, thank you again for taking time out your day. I did record this because, like I said, we had some folks at the NASCAS conference, so I'll do a follow-up email for those, so you'll get the presentation and you'll also get the recording. Thank you again. It's always wonderful to see you, always wonderful to engage, and I will see you on the next go round. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
This was my favorite webinar, John. So
Oh, there it is. I was about to say, how do I stop the